We're all human. And it's important to know that doctors are people too. Doctors have emotions, they have passions in life and hobbies, and they enjoy participating as active members in the communities where they practice medicine. Doctors have families, friends, and relationships. While the latest in healthcare and the most current treatments for ailments will be topics on this Doctors Are People Too radio TV show, the focus will be in learning more about the interesting aspects in a physician's life and what they do away from the doctor's office or operating room table.
Hello, South Florida and beyond, and globally on the iHeartRadio app. And then tonight, also, for the first time in a while, maybe forever, we're on FM 95.3. So glad to be on the FM dial for our listeners out there. But what I'm really excited about tonight is we have Dr. John L. Wang in the studio tonight. He's an orthopedic surgeon with Orthopedic Surgery Associates. Dr. Wang, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you, David, for having me on the air.
And thank you for being so early with the time change. I mean, you were here like an hour early, so that was great.
Yeah, traffic actually worked out, so I was here a little earlier. It was good.
Yeah, it was weird. It was dark outside, and I was coming here.
Yeah, it was. I was getting a little sleepy, so.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you came aboard on Doctors Are People Too.
Thank you.
I've wanted to have you on for a little while now, and we got to connect outside in the waiting room a little bit, and you have some interesting things I want to get into. But first, for the listeners, want to introduce you again. You have two offices, one in Boynton Beach and one in Boca Raton. I'm going to give out the addresses in a second. But what are your areas of interest? Because I've seen with orthopedic surgeons, it kind of ranges. You kind of specialize in something.
So I'm an orthopedic surgeon, meaning that, I went into training to kind of treat musculoskeletal disorders of, everything. But more recently, I think the trend has been that orthopedic surgeons subspecialize in certain body parts. So be it, spine or shoulder, hand, things of that nature. So my area of subspecialty is hip and knee replacements in particular. Right.
Okay. So, but do you also do shoulder, elbow as well?
Yeah, I think we all have, we're all privileged to be able to treat patients, with all sorts of, joint and, muscle pains. But if a patient comes in for shoulder pain or neck pain or whatever, what have you, we're all very happy to kind of initiate conservative management. But surgically, we all sort of have subspecialty interests, and, so we would only, typically only treat surgically hip and knee patients.
Okay, so let's stay on that topic of hip and knee. Now, with revision joint replacement, is that something that falls under the hip and knee? Is a revision something that you're redoing a surgery? You said this is something you don't see too much of, but it's one of your areas of interest.
Right. So, like we were discussing a little earlier, luckily for our hip and knee replacement patients, these surgeries have become so good and they last for so long that it's rare for us to see revision or redo surgeries now. When we do see them, it's, because it's been in there for a long time and the implants have been wearing out and you may need to revise it to, it's almost like a tire change. So sometimes it could be as simple as just going in and swapping out one of the components and they're pretty much back to normal right away. Obviously other times it may be a little bit more complex. But like I said, luckily for our patients, revision surgeries are not very commonplace.
Well, that's good to hear.
Right.
And more so nowadays because I guess the materials are getting better as well. I mean, medicine's moving so fast. I don't know if it is for you, but I've just been in it for a few years doing PR medicine. It is moving so fast.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every year there's new designs, new components coming out. At the end of the day, we want to put in components that are meant to last a really long time, as long as possible. So there are always new technologies and new implants coming out, and that's exciting.
Well, speaking of technology, let's talk about robotic surgery because that is something that I think all of us as listeners really want to hear a little bit more about. And you are one of the few in this area to do what is called a Mako robotic joint replacement. Can you take us into that a little bit?
So the background is that as orthopedic surgeons, we're sort of like glorified carpenters. I think I kind of mentioned that earlier. When we do the surgery, we want to make sure that we put the components in straight, and we want to make sure that we put it exactly where we want it to be, right? Just like any good carpenter. I mean, of course, it's a little bit more involved than that, but that's kind of, how I think about it. So I want every x-ray and every component and every knee replacement to be put in exactly straight and exactly where I want it. And we could use different tools to accomplish that. We could use cutting jigs, alignment rods, just like carpenters use, levels or, rulers or what have you. So more recently, one of the developments in these new technology is to actually use robots that could actually sense where your bone, the patient's bone, is in three-dimensional space and perform the cuts exactly how you planned it preoperatively to put in the implants in exactly where you want it. Because I think that does have implications in how the patients do and how long the implants last.
And is that more, as we call it, like minimally invasive as well when you use a robot guided?
It could be used to be used to be in minimally invasive surgery, although it's not exactly the same thing. Minimally invasive would really mean more that you're not cutting as much muscles and tendons away while you do the surgery.
I see.
So you could combine minimally invasive surgery with robotic surgery, meaning that you could sort of make the incision and not make it so big or not, cut as much muscles. And then after you're done with sort of the exposure, then use the robot to ensure that the components are really well positioned. So you can certainly combine those two concepts.
I see. And what types of hip replacements do you offer?
So hip replacements is another one of those fields where, again, I think ultimately the best outcome is in surgeries that are performed where the implants are put in perfectly, right? So, the analogy I always draw is if you have a tire that's a little mal-rotated or it's all off kilter, if you drive on it, it's going to wear out faster. Just like any hip replacement, if it's off by a little bit and it's wearing out one part, and not uniformly, it may not last the ideal 30 years. So every hip replacement, I want to be able to ensure that I put it in exactly where I like it to be to ensure proper long-term outcome. So with hip replacements, what I prefer to do is what we call it an anterior hip replacement. So this is a surgery that would combine both minimally invasive techniques because we're not cutting through muscles and tendons, and it also combines technology in the form of live fluoroscopic imaging during surgery to ensure that the components are in exactly where we like it to be before leaving the OR.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Now, do you also you offer a wide array of knee surgeries as well? Can you tell us what you offer for knee treatments would be the better term?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is that, when you come into a surgeon's office, it doesn't mean you're going to get surgery. I think that people are afraid to come in to see a surgeon because
That's a good point.
Because we're going to strap them down to the gurney and just rush them to the OR right away or something like that. But sure, when we see a patient come in with knee pain or hip arthritis or what have you, we always try to do conservative treatment first, whether that's injections, medications, physical therapy, bracing, anything we can do to offer some pain relief and some quality of life before even considering surgery. So, yes, so patients come in and we always talk about simple things and conservative things that we can do to improve the quality of life.
And those things are like, working with them maybe with a physical therapist or rehab, right. Coming up with a plan.
Sure, exactly.
It's not always surgery.
Right. Muscle strengthening, flexibility, gait balance, everything, and some physical therapy locations have even more specialized things like, ultrasound manipulations, things like that. I mean, a lot of these things are very, very effective.
You mentioned your offices, so I want to give out to the listeners a little information about your offices. It's Orthopedic Surgery Associates.
Correct.
And that's in Boynton Beach and Boca. So in Boynton Beach, it's 2828 South Seacrest Boulevard, Suite 104/204. Did I get that right? You have two?
That's correct.
Awesome. You have two
impressive.
suites there.
Yeah.
And in Boynton Beach, the number is 561-734-5080. And then also Orthopedic Surgery Associates in Boca Raton, 1601 Clinton Moore Road in Boca Raton. The number there is also 561-734-5080. And one of the easiest websites to remember for a physician's office, ortho-surgeon.com. That's ortho-surgeon.com. So that's where you can reach Dr. Wang and his staff to learn a little bit more about whether it's you have a weekend warrior injury, or maybe it's something a little bit more serious that we were talking about there for a second. Now, let's break it down a little bit. Where did you go to medical school?
I went to Georgetown University Medical School in Washington, D.C., and that was a really good experience for me. It was very informative, and it was a fun place to live.
So you're a Georgetown Hoyas basketball fan then, safe to say?
Unfortunately, no. I actually went to Maryland for undergrad.
Okay, undergrad, so you're a Terrapin.
Yeah, so, we always fought for the same recruits in that Maryland, D.C. Area, and after I got into Georgetown, I tried, but I could never get into Georgetown athletics just because we're such big rivals from undergrad.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've seen a lot of great college basketball in that area then?
Yes.
That's safe to say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what about residency? Where did you go to residency?
I did my orthopedic surgery training at the University of Miami and Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami. And that was a great experience as well. Superb trauma service, superb orthopedic service. Just really enjoyed my time in Miami.
Very busy hospital.
Very busy.
And you did a rotate through the ER as well. So
sure, Ryder Trauma Center. There are some stories out of it.
So you've seen it all there.
Seen a lot. Yeah, shark bites.
Good point.
Marine injuries. I mean, it's such a unique place where yes, you have sort of these high velocity traumas like any other like any other trauma center, car accidents, motorcycles. But then you also have this component of because you're right on the water, marine injuries, shark bites. I mean, it's just a real unique place.
And probably propeller injuries. I mean, they've seen it all there.
Yeah, and I grew up around Washington D.C. I had no idea that was even a thing. Propeller injuries and shark bites. So it was really eye opening.
Yeah, that goes back into the weekend warriors. I mean, we're in such a nice area that people really get out. And
now, in Boca and Delray, the weekend warriors, I mean, they're not so much, there are a lot of marine enthusiasts, but, it's a lot of, golfers, tennis players, pickleball players, anything really. So
yeah, I've watched a couple of those pickleball games, and those they really get moving in those games.
Yeah.
And it's really loud with the paddle going back and forth.
It's pretty high demand, actually.
Yeah. In a gym, it can get pretty loud, and it's a very competitive game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but let's hold that thought. And on the other side, on Doctors Are People Too, we'll get into a little bit about why'd you become a doctor and orthopedic surgeon and your carpenter ability. No, we're going to get more into that, though, on Doctors Are People Too.
I make a dinner for me and my girlfriend. We ate, we enjoyed. The dinner was very good. She was ready to go to sleep. I said, okay, I'm going to stay on the couch a little bit to watch TV. I started to feel something in my throat, like I was choking, and all of a sudden I feel the pain, the sharp pain, like somebody put a knife in your back and open and do like this. That was when I called my girlfriend. I said, you have to take me to the hospital. I couldn't die. When they were doing the test, they saw something was weird. My valve was ripped. I said, God, please help me to get out of this. Dr. Valle was on call. He was who performed my surgery. I described like an angel. I described like he was there to do that for me. My girlfriend, my son, he told me when they saw him getting out from the operation room, he was sweating. He was tired to be there for 10 hours. For me, it's unbelievable. I can walk, I can exercise a little bit, and I can drink red wine, that light red wine. Of course, 1 glass or 2 glasses. I see the life different. And I want to see my granddaughter to grow and my son to get old. So I wanna live. I think that God gave me one more chance in life, and I had to take advantage of this.
You are listening to Doctors Are People Too with David DiPino, who shows us the human side of medical doctors in the community. If you have a question for our guest, call into the show at 888-565-1470. Now, let's get back to the fun side of doctors and show that they are people too.
And we're back. We're here with Dr. John L. Wang from Orthopedic Surgery Associates in Boynton Beach and Boca Raton. Numbers 561-734-5080. Dr. Wang, we were talking a little bit during the break. I was a little interested in seeing one of the football players had a meniscus tear, Ben Roethlisberger, the quarterback for Pittsburgh, and that was just a few weeks ago, and he was already back on the surgery. And then I thought, wow, if his whole meniscus is torn, that's really odd. But you were kind enough to explain to me that may have been not been the whole meniscus tear. It may have been
it was probably a small tear that the surgeon probably went in just to breed it or clean it up. So typically the recovery for that injury and that surgery could be surprisingly quick, and I was drawing the comparison to another athlete, Russell Westbrook, for the Oklahoma City Thunder. A couple seasons ago, he actually had a meniscal tear, but he missed the rest of the season because I think they actually did a meniscal repair. So when you're doing a repair, you actually have to wait for the tissue to heal before resuming athletic activities. So those are slightly different scenarios.
And these are case-by-case basis.
Right, exactly.
I mean, we'll put you on the spot here for a second there, but these are case-by-case.
Case-by-case, depending on where the tear is, how bad it is and how involved it is.
Well, let me put you on the spot for one more, because this is another one. And I think this will be a little more basic for our listeners and everything. The hip pointer. I'm hearing about hip pointers, and I'm thinking it's maybe like a hip bruise. Odell Beckham Jr. had one of the New York Giants, and he had a huge game yesterday. But last week, he almost missed the game because of a hip pointer. What is exactly a hip pointer?
It's basically a soft tissue contusion or strain, around the hip joint. Again, case by case, depending on the location and severity. But modern medicine and modern physical therapy techniques and athletic training techniques. I mean, some of these guys are coming back really quickly. So again, it's all sort of variable. Really with hip injuries, the more concerning hip injuries are the ones that sort of happen more inside the hip joint. And those could be more season-ending. If certain soft tissue components around the hip joint gets torn and you actually need to go in and repair it, that could be a big deal. So.
Or most of the time, hip pointers wouldn't be a surgery thing. It'd be just rest and recovery and maybe even rehab like we were talking about before. Okay, I just had to ask that because I play fantasy football, so I just want to make sure. No, actually, I don't have Beckham. I'm probably going to be playing him at one time or another.
He's good.
Yeah, he is great. He is a great player. And
unless he runs into the field kicker's net, right?
Yeah, that was odd.
Yeah, that was odd,
Gave him something to talk about in New York City.
Right.
For a couple weeks there. Do you have a favorite NFL team?
I do. I mean, I grew up around Washington, D.C., so, my favorite team growing up is, the Redskins. Unfortunately, for most of my adult life, they've been, really, really terrible. So it's I've been trying to find a new team, but, what you grow up with, you just, can't really leave.
Yeah, are we talking like the Joe Theismann Redskins or just after that a little bit? Darryl Green?
Yeah, Darryl Green, Mark Rypien.
Mark Rypien,
Art Monk. Those guys.
Oh, great receiver. Yeah. Wow, those are legends. Yeah, I followed the Redskins the last few years because up until last year, their running back, Alfred Morris, he's from FAU.
Right, yeah.
And he was, he was great at FAU. And I think he may have been an undrafted free agent. I'm going to get corrected if I'm wrong there. Maybe 7th round. He was late round.
He was late round, yeah.
But, man, he was great with the Redskins.
Everybody loved him. He was great. He was such a humble and hardworking guy from all accounts. And I'm just, bummed out that they couldn't keep him. I think he's with the Cowboys now, right?
Yeah, he's with your rival there, the Cowboys.
Yeah, our chief rivals. So it's kind of, not a great situation for Redskins fans, so...
Are you a Washington Nationals fan, baseball at all? Or
I don't follow baseball as much.
Up until this year, it was hard to follow it the last few years.
Well, up until a few years ago, we didn't have a team, so it was kind of hard.
You go.
Unless you're talking about the old-time Nats or something like that. But, we certainly had some good teams, in Washington the last few seasons. And too bad they couldn't put it all together for, that one great postseason run, so...
So did you grow up in the Maryland, D.C. area?
I grew up right outside D.C. in the suburbs. So, I was a Bullets, Capitals, and Redskins fan.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Those are great teams. And that is that very happening area.
Yeah, it's getting, I think that area is getting better and better. Just the food, the culture, I mean... I think where we haven't beat, obviously, it's the weather and the beaches. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's
So-
not too bad of weather there, though. It does get cold, though.
Yeah, it's good for about 4 weeks a year, something like that.
When the cherry blossoms
Right,
are,
that's nice.
are
yeah.
blooming. Definitely. I want to get more into the hip and knee a little bit more before we break here in a few minutes. But let me ask you, I think an important question to a doctor is, what age range of patients do you treat? Because I know it can, for an orthopedic surgeon, it can go from young to pretty much.
So I think the most common age range for me, at least, as a surgeon who does a lot of hip and knee replacements, I think the peak age range is probably 50, 60, in that range. But certainly, there are a lot of patients that fall outside that range as well. We've done patients as old as 90s, and I've also done hip replacements on patients as young as 25. So it really depends. In general, you try not to do any sort of replacement surgeries until you absolutely need to, and hopefully later on in life. But some of these cases are really heartbreaking, and if you're looking at a young person that got their hobbies and their activities taken away from them, then I think you still do have an obligation to act. So.
And quality of life is a big thing, too.
Quality of life, I was telling about, a patient of mine who had childhood hip problems and wanted to go to the police academy. We did his 2 hip replacements a few months apart and went to the police academy. He's doing fine. I think he's somewhere in New York City, police officer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing to hear. I mean, those are the stories that, are really heartwarming, the quality of life, because we've all known whether if we get sick, even with a common cold or flu, that puts us down even at a younger age, or if we have an injury, it just takes the quality of life right out of you. I mean,
right, and it's tough. I think we're getting better and better. Every few years we're getting better. We're able to offer patients better options. Surgically. And it's one of the reasons why I went to orthopedics is just how great our outcomes are.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you, I know that surgery isn't the first option when patients see you, but when they do have to have surgery, what hospitals are you on staff? Where do you do surgery at?
So I'm on staff at 3 different hospitals currently, Bethesda, Delray Medical Center, and Boca Raton Regional Hospital.
The 3 biggest ones in this area.
Yeah, and they're great hospitals, and really, really do enjoy being on staff and taking care of patients there.
Mm-hmm. When you say Bethesda, is that the east or the west or
both?
Both. Okay, both. Oh,
right.
Good to hear. Wow, yeah, the west one. I mean, I live over by the east one, so I see it every day, and it's amazing campus. Yeah. But that west one looks really neat.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a hotel. When I was driving up the first time, I was wondering where the valet was.
Me.
Yeah.
What brought you to this area? I know you did residency in Miami, but why did you choose Southern Palm Beach County?
Well, I think that it's just when I was looking around for opportunities to join practices, and sort of this was the area that I think had the most need. I think in terms of the patient population and patients looking for what I'm able to offer, I think it just worked out really well. And my wife is from Miami, and so we didn't want to be too far away from her family. It's the age-old, romantic story. You meet, the girl, and then you move back to her town. So that's kind of what happened. And I'm just super happy here. I just enjoy living here every day, being in the sun, being by the water, taking care of patients. It's been really good.
Well, let me ask you, what are your hobbies and passions in life outside of providing orthopedic care?
Well, I think like a lot of other doctors, I enjoy being a bad golfer. Although it's getting harder and harder to kind of just go out there for 5 hours at a time. 2 young kids and the whole deal. So I do enjoy spending time with family, going out to eat. Tons of great restaurants around the area. So just always finding new things, and it's been great.
There definitely is. I mean, between Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade County, you could probably find everything you could imagine.
It's just the area is becoming more diverse, and it just there's just more and more options. So.
I want to give out your info again. It's Dr. John L. Wang, Orthopedic Surgery Associates. He's in Boynton Beach at 2828 South Seacrest Boulevard, Suite 104/204. The number there is 561-734-5080. And then also Orthopedic Surgery Associates, Boca Raton, 1601 Clinton Moore Road, right here in Boca Raton, 561-734-5080. Same phone number at both locations. That makes it easy. And easy website, orthosurgeon.com. It's ortho-surgeon.com. Dr. Wang, we only have a few more minutes. Why did you choose to become a doctor in the first place?
So I think, like a lot of other doctors, basically we're drawn towards the science of medicine, but probably during our studies we kind of realized that we want that human interaction, that interaction with patients, and to provide something that's just you could put your finger on, that you could deliver quality care and see patients get better. So that's kind of what happened to me. I was a chemistry major in college. I liked the science, I liked all the technology, but I found that I was missing that human element in the lab, late at night at 10 o'clock. And I'm kind of thinking, I wish there was more, and that's why I got into medicine.
And you mentioned carpenter, so orthopedic surgeon, got to be very good with your hands. You like building things?
I do.
Engineering.
I have a pretty mean tool chest. It's pretty well stocked with different power tools. And that's kind of, one of the reasons I got into orthopedics. When I got into medical school, I didn't really have any ideas of what I wanted to do. I kind of looked around and I saw the orthopedic guys, with the music and the OR and the power tools, and I kind of thought that I need to get in on that. So, but really, what ultimately happened and what really convinced me is just looking at how great these orthopedic patients do. I think we've advanced so much, over the last 10, 20, 30 years, where we're literally putting bones back together where leg bones are snapped in half, and then half an hour later they can walk, or bad hips, bad knees, where patients are confined to wheelchairs, and then a few weeks later after surgery they're walking again. I mean, it's just really exhilarating to see that result.
Yeah, and the timetable for return from injury is getting shorter and shorter. Right. It seems like
that the field is just there's so much advancement, and everybody's getting better. Techniques are getting better. Rehab is getting better. I mean, ultimately the most important thing is patients are getting better. So.
We talked about the Mako robotic joint replacement. Which one of the hospitals is that at?
That's at Bethesda currently.
Bethesda, okay.
But certainly there are some plans to have that available elsewhere as well.
Because hospitals are always bringing in new technology as well.
We all want to offer what's best for patients.
Definitely.
Right.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming on Doctors Are People Too. Let me give out your info one more time. Dr. John L. Wang, Orthopedic Surgery Associates. Very easy website. I love that you told me.
Yeah, we're pretty proud of that website.
Ortho-surgeon.com. It's ortho-surgeon.com. I hope I spelled that wrong. Ortho-surgeon.com. And the number with offices in both Boynton Beach and Boca Raton, the number is 561-734-5080. Please, in the future, don't be a stranger and come back on Doctors Are People Too. I'm sure we could go a lot further than 30 minutes.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
And you're very easy to talk to. The listeners, he's got a great, what I guess they call bedside manner. I think we got a little bit of the comfortableness here tonight. So thanks again for coming on Doctors Are People Too.
Thank you, David.
My dad is a cardiologist, and so I have two brothers, and we're all equally painful to my mom. And so to get us out of the hospital, we would go on rounds with him on Saturdays and Sundays in the hospital back in Oklahoma City. And we used to, race wheelchairs down the hallways from the time I was about 6 years old. When I was a freshman in high school, I got to watch my first heart transplant. But I think what really kind of made me want to be a doctor was around the holidays. The house always filled up with tons of gifts from thankful patients, and to impact people's lives like that in a positive manner was something that was very exciting to me. I'm very patient-oriented. I care about the patients both professionally and personally, and not only about their result, but also that I'm passionate about new technologies. I'm passionate about research, and I'm passionate about offering them the best technology available with the lowest risk and with the best outcome. What you want in a physician is someone who is personable, works as a team, embraces new technology, is clearly accomplished, but I think most importantly is somebody who you get confidence in, and the way I would have confidence is if I had a condition, I would read as much about it as I could before I showed up, probably off the internet, and then ask very directed questions. I do a lot of exercise. Running is what I use to kind of calm my brain down and kind of sort my thoughts out. So I enjoy, I just will put my shoes on and go for a run, and then I do mix in a little bit of yoga, something probably not many people know about me. I keep that on the down low, but so I do some yoga, and I go to the gym like most people.
You are listening to Doctors Are People Too with David DiPino, who shows us the human side of medical doctors in the community. If you have a question for our guest, call into the show at 888-565-1470. Now, let's get back to the fun side of doctors and show that they are people too.
And we're back on Doctors Are People Too on iHeartRadio app and now on FM 95.3 as well as 1470 AM. I'd like to welcome Dr. Mark Shaya to the program. He's a neurosurgeon in Miami with North Shore Medical Center. Dr. Shaya, how are you doing tonight?
Very good. How are you doing, David?
Thank you, and thank you for coming on to Doctors Are People Too. And this time change, I'm really liking it because I've had two doctors back to back early, so I think the time change has helped me out. No, I know you guys always do a good job about getting to see patients as quick as you can, but let me get right into it though. With neurosurgery, I have a lot of questions because as a novice, I kind of think it just as surgery performed, you know, the brain, spinal, but I know it's much more in depth than that. Let's start on the hospital side. What types of technology does North Shore Medical Center offer to treat neurological disorders?
Well, North Shore has a lot of technology as far as spine goes. I mean, we have all the appropriate tables and cautery devices and neuro navigation, and there's really no expense spared as far as things we need to stabilize the spine, to treat any kind of spinal disorder, simple or complex. As far as brain's concerned, we have intraoperative navigation, intraoperative imaging, and more recently, North Shore obtained the Edge, which is an excellent type of radiosurgery, the most cutting-edge type of radiosurgery, and that's very exciting. This was obtained the last about a year ago. And so North Shore ranks up there with any great medical center as far as neurosurgery, and my patients that go there rave about it, and the nursing care that they have afterward is excellent, which is very important. You can have a great operating room, but if the nursing care and the care afterward is off or not attentive, that can be problematic. But North Shore has excellent nurses, and the care afterward is really top notch. And this is one thing that they should be recognized for.
And we're here on Doctors Are People Too with Dr. Mark Shaya, neurosurgeon at North Shore Medical Center in Miami. The address to North Shore is 1100 Northwest 95th Street in Miami. It's just about a half mile west of I-95. And Dr. Shaya, I got to tell you that I've been there a few times, and it's really easy to get from 95 to the hospital. I guess being a doctor, that's got to be a great thing as well, because you guys are called in, and guys and gals are called in at all different times, right?
Yeah, we living in Miami, you got to know alternate routes too, because the 95, ever since they put those express lanes, it has become quite problematic sometimes. So we take 7th Avenue sometimes, and Biscayne sometimes, but 95 is on 95th Street is a short trip up the highway. But yeah, Miami traffic sometimes can be cumbersome in recent years.
Well, that's a great point. Thank you for giving us alternative routes, because I live actually in Boynton Beach, but yeah, I do travel in Miami every once in a while, and I see what you're saying, that from time to time you're going to have to find a different route. So I think that's really helpful. And North Shore Medical's website, I just want to give it out while we're talking about the hospital here, is northshoremedical.com. It's the number there is 305-835-6000, and it's just like it sounds, northshoremedical.com. Dr. Shaya, how long have you been on staff at North Shore Medical Center?
Since about 2005, when I first came into town. So a little over 10 years, probably.
Now, you've had a really interesting case recently, and I know you can't share too much of the specifics, but I think it was done at North Shore Medical Center from what I know, and it was a woman, and that maybe that other doctors in the area didn't feel confident or didn't want to take a shot at the case for certain reasons. Can you bring us a little bit into that story?
This was a lady from up in the Treasure Coast area, about a couple hours away, and she had a surgery in the front of her neck, which I did about a year and a half ago, to replace some osteophytes which were pushing on the front part of the spinal cord, and she did very well with that. She had osteoporosis, but her surgery went fine, and she was at home a few months ago, and she took a pretty bad fall, and she thought, didn't go to the hospital, thought not too much about it, but that fall fractured a vertebrae below the surgery which I did to her, and slowly her neck kept falling forward, and to the point where her neck couldn't be raised up and was cocked forward in such a way. She finally came to the hospital, and we got x-rays and CAT scans and saw that the plate that was put in her neck due to the osteoporosis and the fall had come precariously close to the spinal cord, the screws that were attached to this plate. And so this was a complex surgery in that we had to reverse what was done at the first surgery, fix the fractures from in front, and keep her in the hospital for a few days afterward, and then perform stage 2 of the surgery, which was from behind, to put extra stabilization and extra screws from behind to stabilize the neck. And she's doing very well now, and this was one of those few complex type of front and back surgeries that we do from time to time. I think it's good to stage these and do them in 2 separate days rather than, I know some people like to do this all at one time, and I think for a person in an advanced stage it's good to split these up, because I think it's safer to do a couple general anesthesia times of 2 or 3 hours each rather than one long general anesthesia of 8 hours. I think it's good to split these up and stage them a few days apart.
That's amazing. So she came all the way from the Treasure Coast. I'm from the Jupiter area originally, so I know that the Treasure Coast is north of there. So she came all the way down to Miami for the surgeries?
Yeah, I see patients from up there. I see patients from Naples and Sarasota, some from outside of Orlando. So I get patients from all over North Shore. I had a patient from outside of Atlanta come last week. He's still in the hospital. I think he's leaving today. So we get patients from quite a distance away.
That's great to hear. And has that changed with the way that information is available today, more so than a few years ago? That I think maybe people and their families have a little bit more research options. Is that why, or is it just getting the word out there on a great hospital and the care that you provide?
I think people can research about hospitals online and hospital safety scores online, and North Shore consistently does well with that. I think it's this type of information is now transparent and it's out there. So patients are more informed, and they know now about the doctors and the hospitals and how hospitals perform in safety. And this is important because you can have a great surgery, but if you have a hospital that is not safe for whatever reason, that's not good. And North Shore consistently does well with safety. So this is something to be proud of over there. Yeah.
And that's northshoremedical.com is the website, and the number's 305-835-6000. North Shore Medical Center, located at 1100 Northwest 95th Street in Miami. Dr. Shaya, is there anything like and I kind of put this without thinking about it really, is there any routine neurological cases that you operate on, or is pretty much everything complex? And I think when I'm asking routine, I mean, is there something that you see more times than others, a certain kind of ailment?
Sure. I mean, there's always routine in every field. I mean, the cervical discs are routine that we operate on, and the lumbar compressions that are routine. But every patient is different, and every situation is different, and every time in the operating room is something different, and it's always that's what makes neurosurgery very interesting. That you can have common types of surgeries, but there's always something unique or something different or something on the MRI that is particular, and this is what makes this field very stimulating, and you're always learning. I've done probably over 1,000 cervical discs and maybe 1,000 or 1,200 lumbar surgeries, but there's always something that you'll see new, no matter how many you do, and the more you do, the more new stuff you see. So this one makes the field interesting. Every day is something new. And patients are all individuals. Everyone has a different immune system. They heal differently. They perceive pain differently. And you have some general rules when you see patients and some ideas of how they're going to do, but you never really know. So this one makes the field very exciting and stimulating.
I think that's important. Everything's on an individual basis, and that's why it's good to, like you said, you have a great team there at the hospital. It sounds like, I mean, your experience is really extensive. When did you start practicing medicine?
Oh, my first neurosurgery case when I was a student was in 1998. That was my first case scrubbed in as a student of neurosurgery, and that was up in Detroit in medical school. And after that case, I was hooked. I really liked. It was a spine surgery, and I actually saved the film from that case. I keep it in my office and look at it from time to time. But after that, the neurosurgeon that I scrubbed in with, he encouraged me and said, you might have a knack for this, and so I stuck with it and did the training, and I trained over in Houston and did some extra training in Louisiana, and then came over to Miami in 2005.
Nice. Dr. Shaya, do you have a couple more minutes if I take a quick commercial break and we'll wrap things up on the other side?
Certainly.
All right, we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the most technically demanding neurosurgeries, and then brain surgery and brain tumors, and the cyber knife on Doctors Are People Too.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rahul Agarwal. I'm an interventional cardiologist in Jupiter, Florida. I did my medical school at the University of Florida and my internship and residency at the same program. I did my chief residency also at Shands, and then did my cardiology and interventional cardiology at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I specialize in general cardiology, interventional cardiology, and nuclear cardiology. Even though I'm an interventional cardiologist, the majority of my practice involves general cardiology. General cardiology is a pretty broad spectrum in that it involves rhythm problems such as atrial fibrillation, heart disease such as coronary artery disease, congenital heart disease, high blood pressure, and cholesterol problems. I do procedures such as cardioversions, which involve trying to convert the patient back to a normal rhythm if they have an arrhythmia. Also deal with plumbing problems such as the coronary arteries, which if they're blocked, I can do angioplasty and stents, which involves balloons that open up the arteries. And these stents act as scaffolds that keep these arteries open. I really do believe in preventive medicine, and one of the areas that I really focus on is diet. One can really get caught up on the pills aspect and the exercise. And diet we talk about a lot, but unless one really has some guidance as to where to go with diet, it can be quite difficult. So I do give my patients homework in terms of books or movies that they can rent or obtain so that they can get educated. Our cardiology office is located in the Abacoa area of Jupiter, Florida, conveniently located between two of the local hospitals. We provide echocardiography, stress testing, ultra monitoring, and general cardiology office visits. We really pride our practice in its staff, who are very courteous and professional. We believe that under our care, you'll feel the same way too.
You are listening to Doctors Are People Too with David DiPino, who shows us the human side of medical doctors in the community. If you have a question for our guest, call into the show at 888-565-1470. Now, let's get back to the fun side of doctors and show that they are people too.
And we're back on Doctors Are People Too, and we have a neurosurgeon on the program today. It's just fascinating stuff that we're getting into. It's Dr. Mark Shaya. He's a neurosurgeon at North Shore Medical Center in Miami. That's northshoremedical.com. Dr. Shaya, one thing I wanted to ask a little bit about is there brain surgeries and performed at North Shore Medical Center? And I know we don't have all night, but like, what types of brain surgeries are performed at the hospital?
Yeah, of course we do a fair amount of brain surgery at North Shore. We have all the equipment for brain surgery, and the most important piece of that is the micro instruments and then the neuronavigation and a very strong operative microscope, which we have. So those are the essential tools. The types of brain surgeries are brain tumors, also arteriovenous malformations. Those are the main types of brain surgeries. And then there's some minor procedures that involve the brain, such as shunts and abscesses and things like that.
Now, is the CyberKnife available at the hospital?
The Edge is available at the hospital, which is the next generation of radiosurgery. The radiosurgery started, and radiosurgery is surgery without a knife. It's basically involves radiation focused on a point in space, and all these radiation rays are focused on a point to burn a tumor and give a high dose of radiation to a tumor within the brain and a negligible dose of radiation to surrounding parts. And so radiosurgery was discovered by a fellow from Sweden named Lars Luxell, and he used a frame and he developed the first gamma knife. And gamma knife involves screwing a frame into the head of the patient, and I remember doing that as a resident, and it was pretty painful, and we put this frame in a gantry machine, and the patient would get radiation that way. Now radiation is frameless and doesn't involve screwing bolts into the patient's head with a frame. After gamma knife, there was CyberKnife, and now after CyberKnife, which didn't involve a frame, it just involved a mask, there's the Edge machine, which North Shore has, and that's the latest and greatest radiosurgery device that's out today.
And the Edge is used primarily to fight cancer? Is it to fight cancer in brain tumors?
In brain tumors, yes. So if you have a tumor on the surface of the brain, it may be good for a surgeon like me to just go ahead and take it out since it's on the surface. But if you have a tumor that's deep inside the brain, this is very not practical to take out, because in order to take it out, you'd have to go through a fair amount of normal, good brain tissue, and that would give the patient a deficit. They could be paralyzed, or they could have a bad outcome. So if there's a tumor way deep in the brain, the best way to take care of this is to first get a biopsy with a small needle. And if a biopsy is too risky, it may just be well to go ahead and radiate the tumor and base the diagnosis on what you see on the MRIs and CAT scans. And this is where the edge comes into play, because the tumor can be radiated from the outside of the head without cutting the skin, and all the radiation beams will focus on a point inside the head where the tumor resides, and the normal brain won't get much radiation or hardly any radiation at all. So it's a wonderful tool to treat deep tumors inside the head.
And that's at North Shore Medical Center in Miami. It's northshoremedical.com, 305-835-6000, located at 1100 Northwest 95th Street in Miami, just about a half mile west of I-95. Now, Dr. Shaya, you have your own private practice as well, because when I was doing research, one of the amazing things that I found is when I went to your website and I typed in specialties and services, or I clicked on it, I found over 100, and this is just a sample of the neurological disorders that you treat. There was over 100 there. I had never seen that many on one listing. Tell me a little bit about your private practice there. It's Neurosurgical Institute of Florida. Is that correct?
Yes, I have a private practice. When I first came to Miami, I was employed for 3 years, and then I developed a private practice after getting a lot of referrals and being more known in the community. I have 2 offices, one downtown and one in Coral Gables, Florida. My private practice sees patients every day. And even Saturdays, we have a Saturday clinic, which patients from far away like, so they don't have to deal with the traffic situation here in Miami, and they can come from Broward and Palm Beach and on the West Coast in a good amount of time. Even the Keys, we see patients from the Keys from time to time. And actually, sometimes my Saturday clinic is busier than my weekday clinics on some occasions. So that's something that's interesting. But we just do about a half day on a Saturday and see a fair amount of patients. Yeah.
But that's still great. I mean, just having the option of a Saturday clinic, I mean, being a patient, not of yours, but, a patient in general, that's just great to hear. So kudos on that. I want to give out the info. It's Neurosurgical Institute of Florida, and it's just, the website is Neurosurgical Institute Florida. It's NEURO, like neuro, and then surgical, institutefl.com. And the number is 305-325-4873, or even easier, toll free, is 1-844 Shaya. That's 1-844-377-4292. I was just going over the areas of interest from that list that I printed out from the website, and like I said, I just can't even describe. It starts at, and I'll probably butcher this a little bit, acoustic neuroma, and it ends at, I'm not even going to try and say that one, thoracic spine trauma. So you pretty much cover the gamut in neurological disorders, Dr. Shai. Is that safe to say that?
I'm a general neurosurgeon, and general neurosurgeons can do brain, spine, and then there are neurosurgeons who focus on particular areas of neurosurgery. I was trained by an excellent general neurosurgeon. I was in Louisiana, and he could do everything. And I said, well, I want to do things like that. Getting back to the website, I have an easier website, which is drshaya.com, drshaya.com, and that goes to the same website that you pulled up. So we got it shorter in the last few years.
Oh, thanks for that. That makes it a little easier. drshaya.com. That's drshaya.com. Dr. Shai, I could talk to you forever. I mean, I feel like I could, but we're running out of time here on Doctors Are People Too. I want to thank you again for coming on the program, and would you come on again in the future for us?
Certainly. Thank you so much for having me. It's a lot of fun talking with you.
Thanks for getting the info out on NorthShoreMedicalCenter.com. That's NorthShoreMedical.com. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and watching Doctors Are People Too with David DiPino. Join us next week for more in-depth views on what doctors are all about and how they spend their free time. All shows can be seen on amp2.tv. And if you have questions you want answered on the air, call 866-224-5422 and leave a message that can be read on the air. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.